He wouldn't let anyone treat him, until the nurse spoke his SEAL's secret code. "Don't touch me," he rasped, his voice like grinding tectonic plates. "I'll sever the artery of the next person who steps past that red line." The scalpel didn't shake. That was the terrifying part. The man cornered in Trauma Bay 4 was bleeding out, a jagged, ugly tear through his oblique muscles, but his grip on the stolen surgical blade was absolute iron. 2 orderlies were already on the floor, clutching bruised ribs. Officer Miller had his Glock unholstered, leveling it at the patient's chest. The air in the ER tasted of copper and ozone. He wasn't a drunk. He wasn't high. He was hunting. And right now, everyone in scrubs was the enemy. Leah slammed the phone down at the nurse's station, the plastic clatter lost in the rising cacophony of the emergency room. It was 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, usually the hour of drunks and kidney stones, but tonight the atmosphere was vibrating with a lethal frequency. "He's going to kill someone, Leah." Jessica, a junior nurse, was hyperventilating near the crash cart. Her face was pale, eyes darting toward the curtained alcove of Trauma 4. He dislocated Mike's shoulder. Just pop. He didn't even look at him when he did it. Leah didn't answer immediately. She smoothed the front of her scrubs, a habitual grounding motion, and stepped around the desk. She was 32, but tonight she felt 50. Her eyes, usually a soft hazel, had hardened into flint. She walked toward the commotion, her sneakers silent on the linoleum. The scene in front of Trauma 4 was a standoff, straight out of a hostage negotiation manual. Officer Miller was sweating, his finger dangerously close to the trigger. Dr. Evans, the night attending, was shouting orders that nobody was following. "Tase him! Just tase the son of a bitch!" Evans yelled, his face flushed purple. "I can't tase a guy soaked in isopropyl alcohol and open oxygen lines, Doc. You want a fireball?" Miller shouted back, not taking his eyes off the man in the corner. Leah pushed past Evans. "Quiet. Both of you." She stopped at the red tape marking the sterile zone of the bay. The man, Caleb, according to the ID they'd found in his blood-soaked jeans, was a ruin of a human being. He was shirtless, revealing a topography of old violence, burned scars on his left deltoid, a puckered bullet wound near the collarbone, and fresh lacerations from whatever car wreck or bar fight had brought him here. But it was his eyes that stopped Leah cold. They weren't wild. They weren't glazed with shock. They were scanning. He was checking the ventilation ducts. He was calculating the reflection in the glass cabinet doors. He was clocking the pulse rate of the cop holding the gun. He was trapped, wounded, and cornered. But he wasn't afraid. He was waiting for an opening to neutralize the threat. "Sir," Miller barked, "drop the blade, now." Caleb didn't blink. He shifted his weight. The movement was fluid, terrifyingly efficient for a man losing that much blood. The wound on his side was weeping dark red, staining the waistband of his jeans. If they didn't close that up in 10 minutes, he'd go into hypovolemic shock. If he went into shock while holding a scalpel, he'd likely slash someone involuntarily before dying. "I said back," Caleb whispered. The sound carried more weight than Evans's shouting. "No needles, no restraints. You aren't clearing me." "We aren't interrogating you," Evans snapped, stepping forward. "We're trying to save your life, you lunatic." Caleb's eyes snapped to Evans. The scalpel moved, a blur of motion. It didn't strike, but the threat was so clear Evans stumbled back, knocking over a tray of instruments. Clang. The noise was deafening in the sudden silence. "Target acquisition," Caleb muttered, almost to himself. He was dissociating. Leah recognized it instantly. He was seeing a jungle, or a desert, or a dark room in a black site. Not Mercy General Hospital. "Miller, lower the weapon," Leah said, her voice dropping an octave. "Are you crazy, Leah? He's armed." "He's a defensive combatant," Leah said, the terminology slipping out before she could check it. "You point a gun at him. His training says you're an insurgent. Lower it, or I swear to God, Miller, I will report you for escalating a mental health crisis." Miller hesitated, then lowered the muzzle slightly. "He twitches. I shoot." Leah stepped over the red line. "Leah, no!" Jessica screamed from behind. Caleb's head whipped toward her, the scalpel leveled at her throat. He was fast, incredibly fast. She could see the grey flecks in his blue eyes, the dilated pupils. She smelled the iron of his blood and the stale sweat of a man who had been running for a long time. She stopped 3 feet from him, close enough to die, far enough to talk. "You've got good positioning," Leah said softly. She didn't look at the knife. She looked him in the eye. "Corner gives you a 90-degree field of fire, protecting your blind side. Smart." Caleb blinked. A micro-expression of confusion rippled across his face before the mask slammed back down. "Who are you?" "I'm the woman who's going to stop you from bleeding out on this floor," Leah said. "But I can't do that if you think I'm the enemy." "Everyone's the enemy," Caleb rasped. He winced, his hand pressing harder into his side. Blood welled up between his fingers. "Protocol 9. No admittance, no sedation." "Protocol 9 is for compromised assets in non-permissive environments," Leah said. She kept her hands where he could see them, palms open. "Look around, Caleb. Look at the lights. Look at the floor tiles. Is this a safe house? Is this a black site?" He scanned the room again. The fog in his eyes wavered, but the paranoia was a vice grip. "It's a trap. It's always a trap. They waited until I was hit." "Who?" "The ghosts," he whispered. Dr. Evans stepped forward again, losing patience. "Enough of this psycho babble. Miller, grab him." The change in Caleb was instantaneous. The predator snapped back into focus. He coiled, preparing to launch himself at Miller. He would die doing it, but he'd take the cop with him. Leah knew she had less than a second. She needed a key that didn't exist in civilian life. She looked at the tattoo barely visible on his inner forearm, a trident, but partially obscured by a burn scar. Not just a trident, there was a specific curvature to the eagle's wing. She knew that wing. She had seen it sketched in a notebook that had been mailed to her in a box of personal effects 3 years ago. She took a breath, praying she was right, praying the letter hadn't been a lie. The room seemed to stretch, time slowing down into a thick, syrup-like suspension. Miller's finger was tightening on the trigger. Caleb's leg muscles bunched, preparing to spring. Leah didn't shout. She didn't scream. She spoke with the cadence of a radio transmission, cutting through the noise in his head. "Viper 3, hold fast. The extraction is green. I repeat, the extraction is green." It was nonsense to everyone else in the room. To Dr. Evans it was gibberish. To Miller it was just Leah losing her mind. But to Caleb it was a thunderclap. He froze mid-motion. The feral tension that held his body together seemed to short-circuit. His eyes, wide and terrified, locked onto hers. The aggression didn't vanish, but the target shifted. He wasn't looking at an enemy anymore. He was looking for a lifeline. He breathed out, a shuddering, wet sound. "Green," he choked out. Who is command?" Leah stepped 1 foot closer. She lowered her voice to a whisper, intimate and urgent. She had to sell this. She had to be the operator on the other end of the line. "Orion is watching, sailor. The tide is rising." The scalpel clattered to the floor. The sound was shockingly loud. Caleb slumped back against the wall, sliding down until he hit the floor, his hand falling away from his side. The fight didn't leave him. The adrenaline did. He looked up at her, his expression shattering from rage into a profound, childlike confusion. "Orion," he whispered. "Danny." Leah felt a sharp pang in her chest at the name, but she kept her face mask neutral. "Stand down, Viper. You're inside the wire. You're safe." She turned to the stunned room. Her voice snapped back to charge nurse authority. "Miller, holster that weapon and get out. Evans, I need a suture kit, 2 units of O-neg on standby, and lidocaine. No general anesthesia. He stays awake." "He needs surgery," Evans protested, staring at Caleb. "He's dangerous." "He's stabilizing," Leah countered. "If you put him under, he'll fight the induction and tear his own heart rate apart. Local anesthetic only. I'll stitch him right here. Everyone else, clear the bay. Now." The authority in her voice brooked no argument. Maybe it was the strange code she'd spoken, or maybe it was just the sheer force of her will. But the crowd dispersed. Miller holstered his gun, shaking his head, and backed away. Leah knelt beside Caleb. He was trembling now, the shock setting in. She reached out, but paused before touching him. "Permission to treat, Caleb." He looked at her, his vision swimming. He reached out and gripped her wrist. His hand was calloused, stained with grease and blood, but his grip wasn't violent anymore. It was desperate. "How?" he rasped. "That code. Nobody knows that. Only the team. Only the dead." "Focus on my voice," Leah said, gently prying his hand from her wrist so she could press gauze against his side. "The tide is rising. You just focus on staying above water." She began to work. It was a messy, ugly wound. A serrated edge had caught him. Maybe a fence. Maybe a knife. She cleaned it with saline, watching his jaw clench. He didn't make a sound. Not a whimper. He just stared at her face, searching for answers in her features. "Danny used to say that," Caleb murmured, his voice slurring slightly as the blood loss caught up to him. "Orion is watching. It meant someone had our backs when the comms went dead." Leah's hands paused for a fraction of a second, the needle holder hovering over his skin. "Danny was a good man." "He's dead," Caleb said bluntly. The grief in his voice was heavier than the blood loss. "I left him in the dirt." "No," Leah said firmly. She pierced the skin, tying off the first suture. "You didn't leave him. The world left him." Caleb hissed through his teeth as she tightened the knot. You're not agency. No, I'm a nurse." "Liar!" He tried to focus on her ID badge. Nurses don't know about Viper 3. Nurses don't know the distress frequency. This nurse does. Leah worked quickly, her movements precise. She needed to close this before he lost consciousness. If he passed out, he might wake up fighting again. "Keep talking to me, Caleb. Tell me where you're hurt, other than the side." "Head," he grunted. "Ringing. Constant. Like a flashbang that never fades." "TBI?" she guessed. Too many to count. He closed his eyes. "Why did you say it?" "The code." "Because you were about to die," Leah said. "And I don't lose patience on my shift." "Who told you?" Leah finished the last stitch. She taped the gauze down, her fingers brushing against the cold sweat on his abdomen. She leaned in close, her lips inches from his ear, so no one else in the busy ER could hear. "Daniel Miller was my brother," she whispered. Caleb's eyes flew open. He stared at her, really stared at her, for the first time. He looked at the shape of her nose, the set of her jaw. The recognition hit him like a physical blow. "Leah," he breathed. Lee. He talked about you. The one who sent him the cookies that tasted like sawdust." A sad, small smile touched Leah's lips. They were oatmeal raisin, and he loved them. Caleb's head fell back against the wall. A tear, hot and angry, leaked from the corner of his eye, cutting a track through the grime on his face. "I'm sorry," he choked out. "I'm so sorry." "Save it," Leah said, her voice trembling slightly. "Just stay with me, Caleb. Stay with me." 2 hours later, the chaos of the ER had subsided into a low, rhythmic hum. Caleb had been moved to a private room at the end of the hall. Leah had pulled rank and called in a favor to keep him out of the general ward. He refused a gown, sitting on the edge of the bed in his blood-stiffened jeans, shirtless, his torso wrapped in stark white bandages. Leah entered with a cup of water and a packet of antibiotics. She had expected him to be sleeping. Instead, he was standing by the window, peering through the blinds at the parking lot below. "You need to rest," Leah said, closing the door softly behind her. Caleb didn't turn. His back was a road map of trauma. There was a black sedan, circled the lot twice. No lights. "It's a hospital, Caleb. People come and go at all hours. Uber drivers, worried families." "Not like this," he said. He turned to face her. The color had returned to his face, but he looked exhausted. The manic energy of the ER was gone, replaced by a hollow, haunting vigilance. "I shouldn't be here, Leah. I'm a danger to you." "You're a patient," she said, setting the pills on the bedside table. "Take these. Prevent infection." He ignored the pills. "Danny, he died saving me. You know that, right? It wasn't an accident. He took the round meant for my breech position." Leah felt the old wound in her heart rip open. She had the official letter. Killed in action, heroic conduct, but the details had been redacted. Black ink over the truth. "I didn't know the specifics," she said quietly. "The Navy doesn't exactly share the play-by-play." "He made me promise," Caleb said, stepping toward her. He moved with a limp now, the adrenaline gone. "He said if he didn't make it back, I had to check on you, make sure you were okay." "So you've been stalking me?" The question came out sharper than she intended. "No," Caleb shook his head. "I couldn't face you, not with his blood on my hands. I've been away, off the grid. But I heard things." "What things?" Caleb hesitated. He looked at the door, checking the lock. "Danny didn't just die in a firefight, Leah. We were set up. Someone fed us bad intel. Someone inside." Leah's stomach dropped. "Caleb, that sounds like paranoia. PTSD. He gave a bitter laugh. "Yeah, that's what the VA says. That's what the shrinks said before I walked out. But I found something. A ledger. I was bringing it to a journalist in the city when they found me." "Who found you?" "Cleaners. Pros." He gestured to his wound. "This wasn't a bar fight. It was a knife fight in an alley 3 blocks from here. I got away, but I left a trail." Leah looked at him, searching for the madness she had seen earlier. It was still there, lurking at the edges, but his logic was terrifyingly sound. And she remembered Danny's letters. The last few had been different. Anxious. He had written about cleaning house and rot at the top. "If you're right," Leah whispered, "then you bringing yourself here." "Put a target on this building," Caleb finished. "I need to leave. Now. Before they figure out I didn't bleed out in that alley." "You can't walk," Leah argued. "You'll rip the sutures. You've lost a liter of blood." "I've operated on less." He grabbed his tattered shirt from the chair. "I need my boots." "Caleb, stop." Leah stepped in his path. She put a hand on his chest. His skin was burning hot. "If there are people looking for you, running out the front door is suicide. We have cameras everywhere. Security." "Security," Caleb scoffed. "Mall cops with flashlights." Suddenly, the overhead paging system dinged. "Dr. Blue to West Wing. Dr. Blue to West Wing." Caleb froze. "What's Dr. Blue?" Code for cardiac arrest, Leah said automatically. No, Caleb said, his eyes narrowing. Listen to the tone. It's pre-recorded. The cadence is wrong. You're hearing things. Am I? Caleb moved past her, pressing his ear to the door. How many floors is the West Wing? It's the administrative block. It's empty at night. Then why is there a cardiac arrest in an empty building? Leah opened her mouth to argue, but then she heard it. Not the frantic scuffling of nurses, but the heavy, rhythmic thud of boots. Distinctive boots, not sneakers, not dress shoes, tactical soles on linoleum. She looked at Caleb. He was already moving, scanning the room for a weapon. He grabbed the IV pole, snapping the metal stand from the base with a grunt of exertion. "Turn off the lights," Caleb commanded. "Caleb! Turn them off, Leah!" She hit the switch. The room plunged into darkness, illuminated only by the streetlights filtering through the blinds. "Get behind the bed," he hissed. "I'm not hiding." "You are if you want to live." Leah crouched behind the hospital bed, her heart hammering against her ribs. She watched Caleb press himself against the wall next to the door, the metal pole held like a baseball bat. A shadow fell across the frosted glass of the door. It paused. Leah held her breath. This is insane, she thought. This is a hospital. This doesn't happen. The door handle turned slowly. It was locked. A moment of silence. Then a soft, mechanical click. The lock disengaged. Not a key. A pick gun. Leah's blood ran cold. Doctors didn't pick locks. The door eased open. A silhouette stepped into the room. Tall, heavy jacket, and in his hand, a suppressed pistol. Caleb didn't wait. He didn't shout. He exploded from the corner. The IV pole swung with bone-shattering force, connecting with the intruder's wrist. The gun skittered across the floor, sliding under the bed right next to Leah's hand. The intruder grunted, spinning to fight. But Caleb was already on him. Despite his wound, despite the blood loss, Caleb was a machine. He drove a knee into the man's groin, then slammed his head into the doorframe. The intruder slumped. Caleb fell back, clutching his side, his fresh stitches tearing. "Leah!" he wheezed. "Grab the gun!" Leah looked at the black metal weapon near her fingers. It was cold. Heavy. "Leah!" She grabbed it. She stood up, pointing it at the unconscious man in the doorway. Caleb looked at her, pain and grim satisfaction warring on his face. "Now do you believe me?" he asked. Leah stared at the man on the floor. He wasn't wearing a hospital badge. He was wearing an earpiece. "We have to go," Leah said, her voice trembling but resolute. "We have to go right now." Caleb nodded, forcing himself upright. "Lead the way, nurse." Leah checked the hall. Clear. But for how long? She had saved his life with a code word. Now, she had to save both of their lives with something she didn't know she had. Danny's stubbornness. She looked at Caleb, the man who had let her brother die, the man who had come back to save her. "Don't call me nurse," she said, gripping the gun tight. "Call me Echo." The hallway was a tunnel of fluorescent glare and terrified silence. Caleb leaned heavily on Leah, his breathing ragged, sounding like a bellows with a hole in it. Every step cost him. Leah could feel the heat radiating off his skin through the bandages. The infection he'd been fighting was losing ground to the trauma, but his will was a terrifying, tangible force. "Service elevator," Leah whispered, steering him away from the main lobby. "The cameras in the freight bay have been broken for 3 weeks. Maintenance is slow." "Lucky us," Caleb grunted, shifting the stolen pistol to his left hand to keep his right arm pressed against his ribs. He paused, holding up a hand. He tapped the earpiece he'd stripped from the unconscious assassin. "Team 2, check in. Status on the extraction target." The voice in his ear was distorted, but calm. Professional. Caleb pressed the transmit button twice. Click, click. Copy 2. Proceed to level 3. Bought us a minute, Caleb murmured. They think their guy is just clearing the floor. They reached the heavy steel doors of the service elevator. Leah swiped her badge. The light blinked red. Access denied. Damn it, she hissed, swiping again. They've locked down the perimeter. Security protocols must have tripped when you broke the IV pole. Stand back, Caleb said. You're not shooting the lock, Caleb. This isn't a movie. Ricochets kill people. He looked at her, exhausted, but impressed. I wasn't going to shoot it. I was going to short it. He knelt, prying the faceplate of the card reader off with the tip of the scalpel he'd retrieved. With surprising delicacy, he stripped 2 wires and tapped them together. Sparks showered the linoleum. The doors groaned and slid open. Where did you learn to do that? Leah asked as they stepped into the metal box. Baghdad, 2009. We didn't have keys. He hit the button for the basement. Where's your car? Parking garage B, 2nd level. Blue Honda CR-V. Caleb shook his head. Too obvious. If they ran your plates, they're waiting for it. We need a clean ride. I'm not stealing a car, Caleb. I'm a nurse, not a felon. You assaulted a federal contractor and are currently aiding a fugitive, Caleb said, his eyes scanning the numbers counting down. Technically, you're already a felon, Echo. The elevator pinged at the basement level, the morgue and laundry. The air was cooler here, smelling of bleach and formaldehyde. Ambulance bay is this way, Leah said, pointing left. Too many eyes, Caleb countered. He pointed right toward the loading dock. Laundry trucks. It's 4 a.m. The morning delivery should be unloading. They moved through the corridors, dodging a pair of orderlies pushing a linen cart. At the loading dock, a massive delivery truck sat idling, the driver nowhere to be seen, likely inside grabbing coffee. Get in, Caleb ordered, boosting her up into the passenger seat before hauling himself up with a groan of agony that turned his face grey. Caleb, your stitches, Leah warned, seeing a fresh bloom of red on his side. Drive, he rasped, head lolling back against the seat. Get us to the highway. Then head north. Leah hesitated only a second. She thought of Danny. She thought of the cold, dead eyes of the man in her hospital room. She put the truck in gear and punched the gas. As they peeled out of the loading bay, shattering a wooden pallet in the process, Leah looked in the rear-view mirror. 3 men in tactical gear burst out of the stairwell door, weapons raised. But they were too late. The truck roared up the ramp and into the pre-dawn darkness, swallowed by the city. The adrenaline faded somewhere around mile marker 40, replaced by a cold, shaking dread. Leah drove the stolen laundry truck with white-knuckled intensity, checking the mirrors every 10 seconds. Caleb had passed out 20 minutes ago. His head slumped against the window, the pistol loose in his lap. He looked younger when he slept, the lines of pain smoothing out, revealing the face of the boy her brother had trusted with his life. They needed a safe house. Her apartment was compromised. Her parents were in Florida, too far. Then she remembered. The glass house. It wasn't actually glass, but Danny had called it that because the old hunting cabin on Lake Erie had drafty windows that rattled in the wind. It belonged to their uncle, who had passed away 2 years ago. It was off the books, stuck in probate limbo, and completely isolated. It took another hour to reach the gravel turnoff. Leah guided the lumbering truck through the overgrown pines, the branches scraping the roof like skeletal fingers. She parked behind the woodshed, killing the engine. The silence of the forest was deafening after the chaos of the city. Caleb, she shook him gently. We're here. He woke instantly, the gun snapping up before he recognized her. Clear? I think so. It's my uncle's place. No one's been here in years." They made it inside. The cabin was musty, smelling of cedar and dust. But it was dry. Leah guided Caleb to the dusty sofa and immediately went to work. She scavenged the kitchen. Clean towels, a bottle of ancient whiskey, and a pot to boil water. She had her trauma bag from the car. She'd grabbed it instinctively, but supplies were low. "I need to cauterize the bleeders," Leah said, examining the wound. The stitches had torn through the inflamed skin. It was a mess. Caleb nodded, taking a long pull from the whiskey bottle. "Do it." Leah heated a knife blade on the gas stove until it glowed dull orange. Her hands trembled, but when she turned to him, she locked them into stillness. This wasn't surgery. This was battlefield triage. "This is going to hurt," she whispered. Caleb looked at her, his blue eyes lucid and intense. "Talk to me. Distract me. Tell me about the oatmeal cookies." Leah pressed the metal to his skin. Caleb's back arched, his jaw clamping shut so hard she thought his teeth would crack. The smell of burning flesh filled the small room. But he didn't scream. He just stared at her, anchoring himself to her face. He shared them," Leah stammered, working fast. "He wrote me that he traded 6 for a sat phone call home. He said you ate 3 of them in one bite." Caleb exhaled, a long, shuddering breath as she pulled the knife away. He slumped back, sweat drenching his hair. "Best damn cookies I ever had." Leah cleaned the area and bandaged him tightly with the towels. She sat back on her heels, wiped her forehead, and let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding since the ER. "Why, Caleb?" she asked softly. "Why was Danny killed? And don't give me the redacted version." Caleb stared at the ceiling shadows. "We were tasked to intercept a shipment. Intel said it was enriched uranium moving out of a port in Yemen, high priority. But when we breached the container, it wasn't uranium." He looked at Leah. "It was cash, pallets of it, American currency, and gold." Leah frowned. "Stolen?" "Payment," Caleb corrected. "We walked into a transaction. Someone high up, someone with stars on their collar, was selling outdated Predator drone tech to the insurgents. We weren't there to stop it. We were there to be the fall guys, the witnesses who wouldn't make it out." "But you fought back." "Danny fought back," Caleb said, his voice cracking. "He saw the ambush before it happened. He pushed me into the extraction zone and held the line. He took on 6 of them alone." Leah covered her mouth, tears stinging her eyes. She had always imagined Danny dying instantly, unknowingly. The idea that he died fighting, died choosing to save Caleb, was both agonizing and fiercely proud. "He gave me the drive," Caleb said, tapping the pocket of his jeans. "The encrypted comms log. It proves who ordered the hit. It proves the treason. That's why they want me dead, Leah. I'm the loose end." Leah reached out, taking his hand. It was a natural, instinctive gesture. "You're not a loose end, Caleb. You're the evidence." He looked at their joined hands. The tension in the room shifted. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was the shared intimacy of survival. "I should go," he whispered, though he didn't pull his hand away. "If they find me here, they find you." "You can't walk," Leah said fiercely, "and I'm not letting you go. Not until you finish the mission." "Danny started this. We finish it." Caleb looked at her, and for the first time, the soldier's mask dropped completely. "You look just like him when you're angry." "Is that a compliment?" "It's the best one I've got." Morning brought a grey, weeping rain that shrouded the lake in mist. It was good cover. Leah found Caleb sitting at the small kitchen table. The drive, a small battered USB stick, plugged into an old laptop she'd found in a closet. The screen was a wall of scrolling code. "It's encrypted with a rolling cipher," Caleb muttered, rubbing his eyes. "Military grade. Without the key, it's a brick. If I force it, it wipes the data." Leah poured 2 mugs of black coffee. Danny wasn't a hacker. If he locked it, he used something he could remember. "I've tried his service number. His birthday, the date of the op. Nothing." Leah sat opposite him. She watched the rain streak the window. "He was sentimental. More than people knew." "Think, Leah. Did he send you anything else? Numbers? A phrase?" "Just the letters. And the box of his stuff." She paused. "Wait. The code you reacted to. Orion is watching." Caleb stopped typing. "That was our call sign, but it's not the password. I tried it." "No," Leah said slowly, her mind racing back to their childhood. "Danny was obsessed with astronomy. He taught me the constellations on the roof of our garage. Orion's belt. The 3 stars. Alnitak, Alnilam, Mintaka," Caleb recited. "Navigation stars." "He used to call me Sirius," Leah said, a smile touching her lips, "because I was the brightest star in his sky. It was cheesy, but—" Caleb's fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Sirius follows Orion." He typed, "Sirius. Access denied." "Damn," Caleb hissed. "Wait," Leah grabbed his wrist. "The phrase I told you in the ER. The tide is rising." "Yeah? It's not just a phrase. It's a book. High Tide. It was the book he was reading the last time I saw him. He left it on his nightstand." Caleb stared at her. "The book. Page numbers?" "No," Leah said, her eyes widening. "The author. Who wrote it?" Caleb closed his eyes, searching his memory of the barracks. "I don't know. It was a blue cover. A thriller." "King," Leah said. "Stephen King? No. It was Clark. Mary Higgins Clark. No, that's not right." She stood up, pacing. "Think, Leah. Think." Suddenly, the laptop emitted a sharp ping. Not from the drive, from the Wi-Fi connection Leah had disabled. Caleb slammed the laptop shut. "We're online. How?" "I turned the router off," Leah said. "External handshake," Caleb said, sliding the Glock from his waistband. He moved to the window, peering through the slats. "Someone just pinged the local cell tower. Their triangulation, our signal." "They found us?" "They're close." Caleb turned to her. "How many ways in?" "Just the gravel road and the lake." Caleb limped to the back door. "Get your coat. We're leaving." "The truck?" "Burned. Too big. We go on foot to the marina down the shore. Steal a boat." But before Leah could grab her jacket, a sound cut through the rain, a low, thumping rhythm that vibrated in her chest. Chop, 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 chop. "Helicopter," Caleb swore. Civilian model, but low altitude. He grabbed Leah, pulling her down to the floor just as the front window shattered. Crack. A canister hissed across the wooden floor, spinning and spewing white smoke. "Gas!" Caleb yelled. He ripped a towel from the counter, soaked it in the sink, and pressed it over Leah's face. "Don't breathe. Out the back." They scrambled toward the rear exit, staying low. Caleb kicked the door open, leveling his pistol. The backyard was a wall of mist and rain. Figures emerged from the tree line. Black tactical gear. No insignias. "Drop the weapon," a voice boomed from a loudspeaker. "This is your final warning." Caleb fired 2 shots, controlled, suppressed coughs that sent the lead figure diving for cover. "Go, Leah. Into the woods. I'm not leaving you. I can't run!" Caleb roared, shoving her toward the trees. "I'll hold them off. Run!" Leah stumbled back, looking at him. He was leaning against the doorframe, blood seeping through his shirt again, the gun steady in his hand. He looked like a statue of defiance. He looked like he was about to die. And Leah realized something. She wasn't just the sister of a fallen soldier anymore. She was the partner of a living one. She didn't run. She grabbed the flare gun from the emergency kit on the wall, the one her uncle kept for boating accidents. "Hey!" she screamed. The tactical team paused, turning toward her voice. Leah raised the orange pistol and fired, not at them, but at the propane tank next to the woodshed where they were taking cover. The flare hit the metal tank with a clank. A spark. Boom! The explosion rocked the cabin, throwing Leah and Caleb to the ground. The woodshed disintegrated in a ball of fire, sending the tactical team scattering in disarray. "Now!" Leah screamed, grabbing Caleb's arm. "Move!" Caleb looked at the inferno, then at Leah, a wild grin breaking through his pain. "You're definitely Danny's sister." They scrambled into the dense tree line, the smoke and fire covering their escape, as the sound of sirens began to wail in the distance. They were out of the trap, but now the whole world knew where they were. The woods were a blur of wet bark and tearing brambles. Caleb moved like a man wading through concrete, his weight leaning heavier on Leah with every stride. The explosion had bought them a head start, but the ringing in Leah's ears masked the sound of pursuit, making every shadow feel like a gunman. They broke through the tree line onto the rocky shore of the marina. It wasn't a yacht club. It was a graveyard of rusted pontoons and fishing trawlers tarped for the season. The rain hammered down, turning the lake into a churning abyss of grey. "There!" Caleb rasped, pointing a shaking hand toward a center console fishing boat, bobbing at the end of a rotting dock. "Outboards! Fast!" Leah dragged him onto the wooden planks. They were slick with moss. Caleb stumbled, his knees finally buckling. He hit the wood hard, a groan of pure agony tearing from his throat. "Caleb!" Leah dropped to her knees, grabbing his face. His skin was grey, clammy, and burning up. The septic shock was setting in. "We're almost there. Get up." "Can't," he whispered, his eyes rolling back. "Leave me. Take the drive. Go!" "Shut up," Leah hissed. She grabbed him under the arms. "I didn't pull you out of an ER, surrounded by cops just to let you die on a dock in Ohio. Move your legs, sailor!" Whether it was the command tone or sheer muscle memory, Caleb forced himself up. They stumbled to the boat. Leah shoved him over the gunwale, his body landing with a heavy thud on the fiberglass floor. She vaulted in after him, scrambling for the console. No keys. Of course. "Caleb, how do I start this?" He was lying on his back, staring up at the rain. Ignition, under the wheel, wires. Leah ducked under the console. She ripped the plastic casing off. It was a tangle of red and black. She mimicked what she'd seen him do at the elevator. Red to red. Spark. The twin Mercury engines roared to life, a guttural cough that settled into a powerful idle. She scrambled up, threw the throttle forward, and the boat surged. They tore away from the dock just as flashlights cut through the mist on the shore. Bullets slapped the water behind them, angry, buzzing hornets, but the fog swallowed them whole. Leah drove blindly for 10 minutes, steering toward the center of the lake until the shore lights vanished. She cut the engines to a low rumble, letting the boat drift in the chop. She crawled back to Caleb. He was shivering violently, his teeth chattering. The bandage on his side was soaked through. "Hey," she said, smoothing wet hair off his forehead. "We're clear, we're safe." "Not safe," he mumbled, his eyes unfocused. "Protocol 9. They'll sweep the lake. Thermal." "We're invisible for now," she promised, though she didn't believe it. She opened the trauma bag. She had morphine left, and antibiotics. It wasn't enough. "Caleb, I need to know. The password. We have to upload this." He grabbed her hand, his grip surprisingly weak. "Danny, he didn't die instantly, Leah." Leah froze. "What?" "He lived for 10 minutes. He made me memorize a message." Caleb coughed, pink froth bubbling on his lips. He said, "Tell Sirius that the stars are wrong." The stars are wrong, Leah frowned. What does that mean? I don't know. I never knew. I thought it was delirium. Caleb's eyes started to drift close, but he made me repeat it. The stars are wrong. Leah sat back on her heels, the rain mixing with the tears on her face. The stars are wrong. Danny was a navigator. He loved the stars. He trusted them. Why would he say they were wrong, unless he wasn't talking about the sky? She looked at the laptop, which she'd shoved into a waterproof bag. She pulled it out, opening it on her lap. The screen cast a ghostly blue light on Caleb's pale face. Enter password. The stars are wrong, Leah whispered. She typed it. Access denied. She wiped the screen. Think. Danny was a kid who loved puzzles. He loved irony. She looked at Caleb, dying on the floor of a stolen boat. She looked at the drive. Caleb, she shook him. The flag. The flag in Danny's room. The one with the constellation. Orion. Caleb breathed. No, the other one. The one he drew on. Leah's mind flashed back to their childhood bedroom. Danny had a poster of the night sky, but he had taken a Sharpie to it. He had drawn a line connecting two stars that shouldn't be connected. He had created his own constellation. He called it the anchor, Leah whispered. He said the sky changes, but the anchor holds. She typed, Thiencha, access denied. Leah screamed in frustration, slamming her hand against the fiberglass. Think, Leah, you're his sister. Caleb's breathing hitched, a death rattle. Caleb, stay with me. She grabbed his shoulders. Protocol 9, the tide is rising. Caleb's eyes fluttered open. He looked at her, not with recognition, but with clarity. Let it drown them, he whispered. Leah froze. It was the line from the book. The book. High tide. What? The response, Caleb gasped. Challenge, the tide is rising. Countersign, let it drown them. Leah's fingers flew across the keyboard. Let it drown them. The screen flashed green. Decryption complete. Folders appeared. Video_logs. Bank_transfers. Operation_black_sand. I'm in, Leah sobbed. Caleb, I'm in. She looked down. Caleb wasn't moving. His chest had stopped rising. Leah's world narrowed to the single, terrifying point of Caleb's stillness. No, she commanded, her voice cracking. No, you don't. You don't get to be the hero who dies at the end. She slammed her fist into the center of his chest. Precordial thump. Nothing. She started compressions. 1, 2, 3, 4. The rhythm of staying alive. Come on, Caleb. Come on. She breathed for him. The taste of whiskey and blood was on his lips. She pumped his chest again, counting aloud, screaming the numbers into the storm. 15, 16, 17. A gasp. Caleb's body convulsed. He sucked in a jagged breath, coughing violently. His eyes flew open, wild and terrified. That's it, Leah wept, falling back, her hands shaking. Breathe, just breathe. He was alive. Barely. But she had brought him back. A low hum vibrated through the hull of the boat. The sound of a heavy engine. Not the helicopter this time. A boat. Leah looked up. Through the fog, a shape emerged. A Coast Guard cutter? No, it was sleek, black, running without lights. They found us, Caleb wheezed. Thermal. Leah looked at the laptop. The upload bar was at 0%. No signal. They were in the middle of the lake. We need to broadcast, Leah said. How do I boost the signal? Caleb pointed weakly to the boat's radio console. VHF. Channel 16. It's open frequency. But data. I can't send the files over radio, Leah said. But I can play the audio. She grabbed the auxiliary cable from the boat's stereo system and jammed it into the laptop's headphone jack. She cranked the VHF radio to max volume and set it to Channel 16, the International Distress and Safety Channel. Every ship, every station, every Coast Guard post within 50 miles would hear it. She clicked on the file named confession_gen_Vance.mp3. This is General Vance. The shipment is secure. The SEAL team will be neutralized at the extraction point. No witnesses. The voice boomed over the boat's speakers and simultaneously blasted out over the airwaves. The black boat was closing in. A spotlight blinded them. "Hands in the air!" A voice amplified by a megaphone roared. "Cut your engines!" Leah stood up. She didn't put her hands up. She stood over Caleb, shielding him. "Did you hear that?" She screamed into the darkness, pointing at the radio. "Everyone heard that." The black boat didn't stop. A machine gun mounted on the bow swiveled toward them. "Fire!" the command came. Leah dove on top of Caleb. Tracer rounds tore through the air, but they didn't hit the fishing boat. A deafening horn blasted from the mist behind them. A massive white hull cut through the fog, flanked by two fast-response rigid inflatables. Blue lights flashed, blindingly bright. "United States Coast Guard, stand down! Surrender your weapons!" The black boat hesitated. The machine gunner froze. On the radio, Channel 16 was alive with chatter. "Mayday, Mayday, this is Coast Guard Station Erie. We are receiving a priority broadcast. All vessels stand by." The audio file was looping. General Vance's voice, cold and incriminating, was playing in every wheelhouse on the lake. The black boat turned hard, trying to run. "Engage!" the Coast Guard commander ordered. The night erupted in noise, but Leah didn't watch. She buried her face in Caleb's neck. "We did it," she whispered. "Orion was watching." Caleb's hand found hers. He squeezed it once, weak but steady. "Echo," he murmured. The tide turned. 3 days later. The silence at Walter Reed was heavier than the roar of the boat engines. For 72 hours, Leah had listened to the terrifying beep of ICU monitors. But now, only the soft hum of air filtration remained. Caleb lay in the bed, scrubbed clean of the lake's grime, his skin pale against the white sheets. He didn't look like Viper 3 anymore. He looked like a man hollowed out by duty. Leah reached out, resting her hand on his cool forearm. He stirred, his eyes snapping open. The soldier's instinct kicked in instantly. Gaze darting to the door, the window, the IV line. "Easy," Leah whispered, leaning over him. "Stand down, sailor. You're inside the wire." Caleb blinked, the tension bleeding out as he recognized her. "Status?" he rasped, his voice a wrecked croak. "Stable," Leah said, her voice wobbling. "Perforated bowel sepsis. You almost didn't come back. But the drive is safe. The Coast Guard took it to the DOJ. It's done." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Before he could speak, the door clicked open. A man in a charcoal suit walked in. Agent Ross, FBI Special Projects. He didn't look like a doctor. He looked like a cleaner. "General Vance was taken into custody 18 hours ago," Ross stated calmly, bypassing pleasantries. "Your broadcast forced our hand. We couldn't contain it." "And the charges?" Caleb asked, wincing as he shifted. "I'm a fugitive." "You're a whistleblower acting under duress," Ross corrected. "The official story is an off-the-books counter-intel operation. You're retiring with a medical discharge, full benefits, and an NDA. "And Danny?" Leah asked sharply. Ross's expression softened. "Petty Officer Miller's record is amended. The accidental death is revoked. He's being posthumously awarded the Navy Cross. His name is cleared." Leah covered her mouth to stifle a sob. It didn't bring him back, but the truth was finally out. Ross placed a velvet box on the table. "The Purple Heart. for the man who died dragging you to the extraction point. He turned and left. The room felt suddenly vast. Caleb stared at the box, his hand trembling. "It's over," Leah whispered. "Is it?" Caleb looked at the ceiling. "I've been running for 3 years. I don't know how to stop." "You heal," Leah said, lacing her fingers through his. "And you don't do it alone. Your family, Caleb. Danny sent you, and I wasn't going to let the last piece of him die." Caleb looked at her, his guard finally dropping completely. "You're not a nurse," he murmured with a rasp of admiration. "You're an operator. Torching that shed, that was impressive." Leah laughed through her tears. "I'll pay for it. But you're paying for therapy." "Deal," Caleb whispered, his eyes drifting closed as exhaustion claimed him. "But I was promised oatmeal cookies, the kind that don't taste like sawdust." "Arranged," Leah smiled, squeezing his hand. "My kitchen, no grenades." "Copy that, Echo. They say trauma bonds people, but survival defines them." Caleb and Leah didn't just survive the night. They dragged the truth into the light, honoring the ghost of the man who connected them. In a world full of noise, sometimes you just need one person who knows your frequency. If you enjoyed this story of high-stakes action and emotional healing, please hit the like button and subscribe for more thrilling tales. Share this with someone who would answer your distress call.